This is where we left off last time. We finished the HTML. The only styles we have are the different colors, and this is what we want the page to look like. And what we're going to work on today is simply this part right here, which is the header, and that will take us through enough CSS, um, and then we'll stop and start working on the next section. All right, so one of the first things we want to do is we want to take this and move it down. So right now, this is an H2, and this H2 is a block level element, which means it's taking up the entire size of this. And that's why Stewie stays up here and doesn't move down here or move down here, because this takes up, there is no room for Stewie to go. But if we made this if made this an inline block element, and inline meaning that it takes up only the space of the content, and then inline block means I can move it up, move margin and spacing up and down. That will then say, well, this is enough room for these two things to fit on that line. So let's go ahead and do that. What we're going to do is, here's the header. And what we want to do is create a selector to say, I want you to select in the header the H2 tag. And by default, the display is block. And I want to change that display to inline block. And then we'll do File, Save All, and I will refresh. And you can see now Stewie and this are left and right. Now, if I took it to the left, or right now it's centered. Remember we said that everything in the body is going to be centered, and it is nicely center here. But if we said, oh, let's left align it, then both Stewie and this would left align. If we tried to say, well, let's take this image and left align it, it wouldn't move, because what we'd be doing is aligning it left inside its container, and its container is right here. Left, center, right doesn't make a difference. We want to take this and slide it on over. There's a lot of different ways that we can do it, but probably the easiest way is to float this picture and float it to the left, and then it would automatically glide over to the left here without changing this text right here. So let's go ahead and do that. So that's going to be, and again, it's in the header, and I'm going to put it after the header H2, even though in the HTML it's above it. Let's just make it, I try to keep everything in order so it's easy for people to find after that. They say, okay, where's the header stuff? And in the header, image is first, and then H2 is second. So I'll do header img for the image, because we're actually selecting that tag. And what we're going to do is we're going to say float left. And we'll do File, Save All, and refresh. Whoops, not that one. And refresh. So now Stewie's to the left. He's exactly where we want him to be, but we have a couple of problems. One is he's outside the header now. You can see that this moved up. And this is what's called border collapse. What was keeping the border up where it was the fact that this picture was in it, and it was over here, and then we had some margin on the bottom of this, and that's what was keeping that height that way. Now, a couple of ways I can go ahead and fix this. One is I can increase the height of the header here, and that would then push everything else down, and we would stop in messing around with this stuff here. You can see it broke the navigation. Another way we can do it is I can clear that float. And what we want to do is you want to hit the next container. So we want to have it so that we say, okay, let's not have this mess with the nav. Let's clear the float of the nav to the left, which means that any float to the left, which is this is above, so it's to the left, won't mess with it anymore. So let's go ahead and do that. And that is in the nav. And I'll just say clear left. File, save all, and you can see, boom, it's fixed. So it fixed the nav, but broke the header because now the picture's down here. Now again, I can fix that by trying to figure out what height I need to have this. And I can do that by uh, going into the developer tools and then seeing how many more pixels I have to make this in order to make it that big. But there's an easier way of doing it. And there's an easier way to fix both of those problems. And let's go back in and I'm going to get rid of this clear float. This clear left. File, save all, and refresh. I don't know what happened there. Oh, I did a file save instead of a file save all. And then I refresh, and you can see now it's broken again. An easier way to fix it would be to go into this header and say if there's any floats inside this header, I want them contained. And I do this by changing the overflow. So we do an overflow auto. This is called the clearfix. Sometimes developers make they'll make a class of clearfix. And the only thing in it will be overflow auto. And anytime they have problems with floats, they just give that container a class of clearfix, and it all clears everything up and fixes everything. I guess that's why they called it clearfix. Here we'll do it individually anytime we find it. We're not going to use a lot of floats. Do file and save all, and then refresh. Boom. Now it's perfect. So clearfix is a way you can see that it looks like a little extra dark here. That's really just the picture. When I cut this out of wherever it was, I left a little black on the edges because I couldn't quite cut it out the way I wanted it. So this is Mr. Brady's not being very good at editing picture problem, not an HTML CSS problem. I'd have to open it back up and then cut off the extra black I have here, and I can't be bothered doing that. So just live with it. Just know that's why that's there. It's because of Mr. Brady's inability to edit pictures. Now we have another problem. We want this and this text to be centered on the page, and this is not centered on the page. This is off to the left. And we know that the header, starting with the body, main, header, and all these other ones has a centered, and that's why it's hanging out here. The problem is this picture here, because this picture shows up here, even though it's floating above the header, because that's why we had the border collapse and all that mess, it's still being seen by the browser. So it automatically adjusts anything to the right of it to the right. And that's why. So this is actually 90 pixels off because this picture right here is 90 pixels that way. So we want to go ahead and fix it and drag this 90 pixels to the left to compensate for the fact that we have this picture here and it's impacting how this H2 is centered. That's not a bug. That's an attribute. That's how the browser helps you. You really would, in theory, this H2 can't see that picture because it's floating, but they know that when you put stuff on there, you don't want to hide the actual content of the page, so they automatically move it over. So let's go ahead and fix that. Since we know, because I'm telling you, but we can look that up, or we can do the developer tools and see that this is 90 pixels in width. We need to move this to the left 90 pixels. And the easiest way to do that is with margin. So if I go to the header H2, I want to go ahead and add another attribute to that, or change another property. And the property I want to change is margin left. So right now, margin left on that is 0. There is no margin to that left. And the reason for that is that it's an inline block element. It's centered. It has 0 padding. It has 0. Well, actually, it does have a little bit of margin up and down. That's why it's not touching this line at the very top here. So what I want to do is, if I want to move something to the left, I would use negative margin, and that creates a vacuum that will move this 90 pixels to the left. And then it will always be centered because this picture is 90 and this picture is pushing it over. So let's do that. So I'll do negative 90 pixels. Not an eloquent solution, but the best and easiest solution of being able to do that. I always cringe whenever I'm using negative margin because I feel like I'm not so sure that it's a good idea because I'm kind of muscling it where it needs to be rather than having it go with the regular flow. But in this case, that's the best solution. So let's go ahead and do File and Save All, and then refresh. Boom. Now everything is perfect except for Mr. Brady's ugly, ugly black line here. And again, ignore that line. I don't feel like having to redo all my videos by changing that picture, so I'm not. Um, and there you go. So now the next thing we're going to do is start working on the navigation. We'll see how long it takes to do the navigation. Might do navigation and um, the aside and uh, article next also. All right, on to the next one.